Trump administration, they are allegedly planning a baby bonus. And what this would do is effectively pay a $5,000 bonus to mothers. This is in a bid to increase birth rates. And the plan comes amid, well, dwindling birth rates in most of the developed world. And it's also framed as a long-term threat to the future of the United States, by the way. And also now there are a few different proposals going through on this, discussions. Really, there's nothing solid quite yet, but we can get an idea of what they're planning. Newsweek said this. It said, when contacted by Newsweek for comment, the White House said President Trump is proudly implementing policies to uplift American families. In other words, they didn't really confirm or deny anything, but we're going to uplift the family. And they say further on that policy experts and advocates have come up with proposals that include reserving 30% of scholarships for the Fulbright Program International Fellowship for those who are married or have children. Another idea would be to give a $5,000 cash, not even credit, cash baby bonus to every woman after they have given birth. And it says a third policy calls on the government to fund educational programs for women about their menstrual cycles so they can better understand when they're ovulating and able to conceive. Not just, in other words, family planning type stuff, but learning how to have kids. And it also says the National Center for Health and Statistics at the Center for Disease Control and Prevention said there were only 54.5 births for every 1,000 females aged 15 to 44 in 2023, which was on the lowest figure on record and 3% down from 2022's birth rate. It says the declining birth rate has sparked political discourse with which, it says, Vice President J.D. Vance said on January 24th that he wanted more babies being born in the U.S. Trump administration officials have not indicated if they would support the ideas, although advocates are confident, it says, that the U.S. president wants to see a, quote, baby boom, a new one. Now, further, it notes that in February, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, a father of 9, reportedly signed a memo instructing the Department of Transportation to give precedence to communities with marriage and birth rates higher than the national average. Now, some of the alleged plans are not written in stone just yet. A lot of this is just planning. They're kind of talking about it. There have been a lot of reports talking about, effectively, this is a threat to the future of our civilization, though. If we do not fix this, you're going to have an aging population. You're going to end up looking like China or North Korea or Japan. And when it comes to this, if you look at charts, that means you have an aging population with nobody to take care of them. You have schools with only a few kids in them. And of course, it creates workflow problems. Who's doing the jobs? Who's inheriting the country? And it does threaten the survival of the country. Now, a lot of stories right now, they're based on reporting from the New York Times. They cited unnamed sources. So to be clear, take it for what it's worth. It's unnamed sources, right? But without a doubt, many key officials in Trump's circles have been talking about this. And so that part is not just a rumor. They're saying we need families, we need to have more kids. And it's not just an American issue. This is a problem of most countries in the developed world. Elon Musk in particular, he's been very outspoken on the population crisis. He's noted that, contrary to what many of us have been told over the years, we are not facing a crisis of overpopulation. That was the whole global warming narrative. Too many people, how do we reduce the human population? We're facing a crisis of underpopulation. There's not enough people. And he's been talking about this a lot over the years. He also reiterated this last month during an interview with Brett Baier on Fox News' special report. Watch this.
Well, there's a lot of things, that I suppose, that I worry about, but and some of these things will seem esoteric to people. The birth rate is very low in almost every country, and it's something, unless that changes, civilization will disappear. America had the lowest birth rate, I believe, ever. That was last year. Places like Korea, the birth rate is 1/3 replacement rate. So that means in 3 generations, Korea will be 3 or 4% of its current size. And nothing seems to be turning that around. Humanity is dying. And people, it's just not something we evolved to react to. And I worry generally about the the strength of America. You know, America is the central column that holds up all of Western civilization. So if you like, if you've got the temple of Western civilization, America is the central column. If that column fails, it's all over. You can't run off to New Zealand or some other place. It's over. So either we strengthen that column and make sure America is strong and will be strong for a long time, or that roof's coming down.
In another video that's getting traction from a town hall event in Philadelphia back in October last year, Elon Musk went deeper into the crisis for civilization, and he noted what America and a lot of other countries are now facing. This is a problem that has come about historically. For some reason, it tends to happen when civilizations get too comfortable and the population crisis ends up kind of destroying them. Watch this.
What ended most civilizations was a low birth rate. That is, an extended period of prosperity seems to cause birth rates to plummet. And it's somewhat counterintuitive. When a society is under stress, birth rates increase. So if you look at, say, ancient Rome, the birth rates were super high when they were fighting the Carthaginians, and Rome's very life was at stake. Birth rates were all-time high. After they defeated Carthage and ruled the Mediterranean, the birth rates plummeted. And to such a degree that Julius Caesar even tried to pass laws like in 50 BC or something like that to give an incentive for any Roman citizen that would have a second or third child. So they were having birth rate issues in 50 BC, which is pretty wild. That was also true to avoid this birth rate collapse, it's the sort of prosperity trap. I don't have a great answer for that, except I think if we can at least bring it to conscious awareness that we need to continue as a civilization, like no humans, no humanity. And at least it's a topic of conversation. It's like, hey, it's something we should do something about. And we definitely want to get rid of this ridiculous notion that there are too many humans on Earth. This is false. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of people who think that the environment can't sustain this number of humans. It's totally untrue. We could double the population of Earth and still not have a significant environmental impact.
Now look, when it comes to Elon Musk, he puts his money where his mouth is. The guy has a lot of kids. There were actually people joking online over the idea of giving $5,000 per family to have kids, that this is obviously just another plan to enrich Elon Musk, right? But, you know, jokes aside, actually what we are seeing right now, this whole narrative, it's a big shift from what we've been told over the years. Remember, a key part of the climate change narrative has been that overpopulation is creating a crisis for civilization. The prevailing narrative was that for humankind to survive, we all have to have fewer kids. People were even talking about, quote unquote, reducing the human population. Elon Musk has been a big advocate on the other side of it, saying, no, we don't need to reduce the human population. We need to increase it. And he puts his money where his mouth is, right? But also, look, there were a lot of global programs for this. Population control, programs in developing countries. There were, in fact, efforts to reduce the human population. What is really fundamental now, what's interesting, is that the movement is going the opposite way globally. There's now a global move pushing for more kids. Have more children. And also, folks, in other news, a campaign within the U.S. government is aiming to, quote, eradicate anti-Christian bias. This also represents a return to the family, good old family structures. A task force on this, going against the anti-Christian bias in the government, it was established by Trump under an executive order back in February. That said, it is the policy of the United States and the purpose of this order to protect the religious freedoms of Americans and end the anti-Christian weaponization of government. And now look, the campaign to carry this out, this has now been started. It was officially announced by Attorney General Pam Bondi. They held their very first meeting of this task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias. Watch this.
As President Trump has stated, The Biden administration engaged in an egregious pattern of targeting peaceful Christians while ignoring violent anti-Christian offenses. The president is right. Biden's Department of Justice abused and targeted Christians. Pro-life Christians were arrested and imprisoned for peacefully praying outside abortion clinics. The FBI spied on traditional Catholics in their parishes. President Biden declared Easter Sunday to be Transgender Day of Visibility. No longer. Vandalism against churches was 8 times higher in 2023 than it was in 2018. And it's at President Trump's directive, we ended those abuses at the Department of Justice on day one. We dropped 3 ongoing cases against pro-lifers and redefined the FACE Act to ensure that abuse would not continue and that American tax dollars were not used to support the weaponization of our legal system to target Christians. Just a few weeks ago, we convicted a man in Arizona for a plot to bomb Christian churches. The Department of Justice will protect religious liberty for Christians and for all Americans. We'll work closely with everyone around this table and take a whole of government approach to solving this problem and ultimately protect Americans' First Amendment rights. The First Amendment isn't just a line in the Constitution, it's the cornerstone of our American liberty. It guarantees every citizen the right to speak freely, worship freely, and live according to their conscience without government interference. Protecting Christians.
Now, among the cases she noted were there's a lot of them, there were the alleged violations of the FACE Act. That was, pro-life demonstrators. They were accused of violating the Freedom of Access to Clinics Entrances Act by protesting in front of abortion clinics. Basically, if you block people from getting medical care, you can be criminally charged. Now, that was not included with people who maybe blocked ambulances or whatever else, blocking freeways. But protesters standing in front of abortion clinics, they were charged with this. He had several dozen of them, in fact. Christians were being arrested under the previous administration. They were being sentenced to prison, long terms in prison, because of this. Now, the Trump administration pardoned them, but for a lot of people, this did represent really an attack on religion. And, one of the key arguments with that is the charges were done out of bias, because we saw 2 different standards. On one side, pro-life protesters were being arrested, charged, sent to prison for blocking the entrances of abortion clinics without violence. But on the other side, there were pro-abortion activists, and not only were they doing stuff like that, they were firebombing pro-life clinics. They were defacing them. They were doing all kinds of stuff. Almost nothing was done about that. So why is it on one side you can stand in front of a door and go to prison, on the other side you can firebomb a building and not go to prison? You tell me, or face a very little slap on the wrist. Now, as Pam Bondi noted, there have also been many instances of churches getting vandalized. And look, generally, it seems the cases are not treated as hate crimes like they would often be if, another group is targeted. If you saw somebody, throw bacon at a mosque, if you saw somebody deface a synagogue, you would probably see hate crime charges. You'd probably see something about it. If somebody burns a church or, defaces a church, is that then a hate crime? For the most part, it has not been treated that way. There are 2 standards when it comes to this, and that's one of the arguments here. And this has also led to a lot of arguments, again, of the 2 standards of justice. Why is there a double standard? Why is it okay to attack one group but not another? Well, law doesn't normally work that way. And this is one of the main arguments being brought forward that there is an anti-Christian bias within the system. In addition to that, there's a lot of other stuff. There were a lot of issues that came up during COVID-19. And COVID-19, really brought a lot of these to the surface. For example, there were cases of churches being forced to close during the lockdowns. Because, remember, only businesses that were deemed essential services, essential workers, only they were allowed to stay open. But, some people had issues with what was deemed essential. You could not go to church, in many places, But in a lot of other places, you could still go to the strip club, you could go to a marijuana clinic, you could get an abortion, but you can't go to church? And a lot of people took issue with that. Many Christians took that as a form of religious discrimination and an attack on their freedom to worship, the fundamental values of our Constitution, First Amendment. Now, it was the same with the vaccine mandates, by the way. Many people who declined to get vaccinated for COVID-19 did so on grounds of religious liberty. And there were many people who viewed the mandates, the vaccine mandates, which often had them risk losing their jobs if they didn't get it, as a form of religious discrimination. This was not just Christians, by the way. You saw the same thing in New York with the Jewish communities, for example. You did see these individuals being targeted as well. But for many people, that was a religious issue. And there were a lot of other things as well. Just going over a basic list. There were changes to HHS, Health and Human Services, that were accused of pushing Christians out of the foster care system. And part of that argument was that Christians have standards and values when it comes to, marriage and family. For the most part, depending on which, group you're in, for the most part, they oppose, transsexualism. And so the argument was, if they don't believe in this, they can't get kids. They can't have foster kids. And some argued that was an attack on their religious liberty. It attacked the fundamental values of their religion. There were campaigns that were believed to be unfairly targeting Christian organizations on college campuses because, the main argument going around was that traditional values, evangelical Christians, were opposed to certain groups, and that was deemed like a political issue. There was even a government memo that framed traditional Catholics as domestic terrorists, and even suggested that surveillance was necessary on Catholic churches for alleged, quote, threat mitigation. Meaning, traditionally religious people, in particular evangelical Christians and traditional Catholics, were being targeted. And people say, why was that being done? A lot of people did view that as a type of bias within the system, and basically an assault on the Constitution. That is the basis of this new investigation being carried out. And, in addition to that, too, it wasn't just the government. There was a whole media campaign. There were many news agencies, not even just in the U.S. This was a global thing. They were trying to label Christians as religious extremists. Religious extremists. And similar narratives to this were even found, in the government reports on alleged extremism. And so, as you often have, legacy media, corporate media working hand in glove with a kind of ideological system that had somehow found its way into some government agencies. These reports taken together with what looked like a system of justice that was weighed against Christians. And there is some basis to that because we can look at the double standards. This all worked to build a picture that there was a systemic bias formed within the system against Christians. And of course, that's the context of what's happening right now. When Donald Trump formed the task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias, it was in light of all these issues and a whole lot more, actually. And also, look, this came about from his executive order in early February. Here's what that does. This is the White House. It says the task force, officially known as the Task Force to Eradicate Anti-Christian Bias, will be comprised of members of President Trump's cabinet and key government agencies. The task force will review the activities of all departments and agencies to identify and eliminate anti-Christian policies, practices, or conduct. Now, briefly on this is where it gets interesting. A lot of activities within culture do involve religious issues. If you touch on something that impacts a person's fundamental values, right, which does include family values, which does include gender and sexuality and things like that, you impact the realm of religion. And so when the Biden administration was rolling out policies, for transsexualism and things like this, that also involved a religious element. A lot of opposition to that was religious. People say this goes against my religious beliefs. It's not just Christians either. Muslims, for example, would be generally, traditionally very opposed to those things as well, because it is a religious issue. Many people who oppose these things oppose them on the grounds of religious belief. Because, of course, religion has standards on family values, sexuality, and so on. And so if you want to force people to adopt new moral standards, by virtue of that, it will necessitate undermining religion. And so when you implement those types of policies that impact family and gender issues and sexuality, automatically you are going to put in place something that challenges people's religious beliefs. And institutionalizing those policies within the government did have the effect of challenging people's religious beliefs. Many people felt they were discriminated because of that. And so, as they go against these policies, practices, conduct, and other things that they say undermine that, it goes into the realm of culture. And this could have the effect to an extent of separating, government from culture. Government should, at least according to the Constitution, protect religious belief, protect freedom of speech, but not dictate it. And that is the boundary that many people believe has now been crossed. Now look, on this though, it says this is the White House document. It says the task force will gather input from various stakeholders to ensure broad perspectives are considered, including faith-based organizations, state, local, and tribal governments, and Americans affected by anti-Christian conduct. What does it mean to be affected by anti-Christian conduct? Well, the automatic assumption is direct attacks on your belief, people directly doing maybe discrimination or hate crimes, saying, oh, you're this religion, I'm going to deny you a job. But it could also include things, again, that force you to do things that violate your beliefs. And even the vaccine mandates, as I mentioned, did go into the realm of religious belief. A lot of people did not accept it because of their religious belief. In other words, this could include a lot of things. It's not strictly just discrimination. And the White House says this as well. They says it will identify and address gaps in laws and enforcement that have contributed to anti-Christian conduct, including by remedying failures to fully enforce the law against acts of anti-Christian hostility, vandalism, and violence. The more direct forms, in other words. And it adds as well, the task force will recommend further presidential or legislative actions necessary to rectify past wrongs and protect Americans' religious liberties. It says the task force will submit an annual report on its progress with a final report upon its conclusion, meaning it's not there forever, but they're going to look and see everything that went against people's religious beliefs and try to remedy those issues, to right the wrongs of past wrongdoings. Now, look, in terms of where things are at right now, it does seem the tables are turning, let's say. But importantly, Pam Bondi, she noted the new campaign, it's not about favoritism to one particular religion. This is publicly being called a movement against anti-Christian bias. The argument here is that they were just kind of targeted more under the previous administration. And she noted this is about protecting the First Amendment rights of all Americans. In the review of this, it could touch on a lot of things, right? Whatever people's beliefs are. And when it comes to Christianity, I mean, the fact is, there are a lot of denominations. There are a lot of them. And sometimes they have very different beliefs. And people are, again, they have rights to those beliefs. If you address things that undermine people's rights to their own beliefs, then that does represent an attack on religion. And if you remedy all of those and find a way to make government so it protects religion rather than tries to dictate it, this could have the effect of really having a ripple effect through freedom of belief for everybody. Now, also, there appears to be a new campaign to bring religion back to America as well, just, overall. And this was also part of Trump's speech at the White House on Easter Sunday. Watch this.
And speaking of special, Easter is special, and it's one of our favorite days. It's one of our favorite periods of time. We're honoring Jesus Christ, and we're going to honor Jesus Christ very powerfully throughout our lives, all throughout our lives, not just now, all throughout our lives. We're bringing religion back in America. We're bringing a lot of things back, but religion is coming back to America. That's why you see the kind of numbers that you're seeing, the spirit and the kind of numbers that you're seeing. So we're going to come down and join you right now But I just want to wish everybody once again, happy Easter and enjoy your lives. We're going to have a great 4 years. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Now, of course, look, when it comes to America, the United States is a very unique country on the face of the world. I've said this many times before. When you have a system that protects freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the freedom of self-defense, the right to bear arms, it changes the nature of what government is. In a lot of traditional cultures, look at the Roman Empire. Look, for example, at the reason why many of the founding fathers and the pilgrims, came to America in the first place. A lot of it was because their religions were being discriminated against while they were in Europe. A lot of governments do have an official religion of the government, right? In England, there was the Anglican Church. In Rome, there was the Holy Roman Empire, right? At least during the later half of it. And of course, one of the reasons why Jesus was nailed to a cross was also because of Christians refusing to kneel before Caesar to an extent, right? When you have governments that do not dictate religious belief, but maintain a system of law that is inseparable from religion, that does create a challenge of how do you differentiate, the difference between forcing religion on people versus just having a system of laws on which everybody can agree. That was the challenge of the Founding Fathers. And the Founding Fathers, well, most of them were Christian, all but a couple probably. While most of them were Christian, they were part of very different denominations that did not agree with each other. And the idea of the United States really represented a system to protect freedom of belief, even when those beliefs are very different from the next. What does that mean for government? It means they should not insert their hand into that area of discourse. And managing people's conflicts with each other, and I'll tell you right now, religious debate tends to be one of the more contentious issues for humanity. Let's just leave it at that. It does create a very difficult issue of how you manage people's issues with each other, especially when people fundamentally might oppose another person's life choices, their moral choices, and maybe their views on fundamental issues like what meat you eat, do you drink alcohol? What is your idea of a family structure? Do you believe in traditional marriage? These fundamental things that form the basis of human society, really. And so, if they really do enforce a standard of protecting religious belief, this could represent, in a lot of ways, the pulling back of government from the personal lives of Americans. And this is something big, because if you go back to traditional societies that did protect religion, typically what that meant was that government did not stretch below the county level. You found this during some areas of medieval Europe. You found this during the early years of the United States. You found this even in ancient China when they had most religions, including Christianity and Catholicism, living side by side. Government does not stretch into the household effectively. And that also means that the household and the family have more authority. And that balance of power does represent a very different type of government from what we've now had, especially when it comes to socialism, which believes you should control basically everything, including managing the family. And so this could represent a further pulling back and a fuller shrinking of government that does not get involved as much in the cultural elements of the society. Although, we will see, right? But look, folks, on to a different topic. HHS Secretary, Health and Human Services, RFK Jr. He's now doing what he said he was going to do. He's promised to ban food dye. Food break.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges. With a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold, you can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, We also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low-price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is now taking action to ban food dyes, the artificial ones. And this is going to be a campaign to phase them out of American food products and also pharmaceutical products. This is mainly going after petroleum-based dyes. And this is because of their many negative health effects. Now, part of this campaign was announced during a joint press conference yesterday between HHS and FDA. FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary stated that the agencies are looking to revoke authorization for 2 synthetic food colorings first and to eliminate 6 synthetic dyes that are used in everything from ice cream to cereal to yogurt to many other foods. Watch this.
Today, the FDA is taking action to remove petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply and from medications. For the last 50 years, American children have increasingly been living in a toxic soup of synthetic chemicals. The scientific community has conducted a number of studies raising concerns about the correlation between petroleum-based synthetic dyes and several health conditions, such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, obesity, diabetes, insulin resistance, cancer, genomic disruption, GI issues. Other studies have found that artificial colors that create vibrant colors mess with the child's developing brain to make ultra-processed foods more attractive, even when the child already feels full. These studies have associated food colors directly with obesity and diabetes. While America's children are sick and suffering, 41% of children have at least one health condition, and 1 in 5 are on medication. The answer is not more Ozempic, more ADHD medication, and more antidepressants. There's a role for those medications, but we have to look at underlying root causes. The F in FDA stands for food.
Now, FDA Commissioner Makary, he was also announcing the steps that the FDA is planning to implement this whole thing as part of this plan. Watch this.
Number 1, establishing a national standard and timeline for the food industry to transition from petroleum-based food dyes to natural alternatives. Number 2, initiating a process to revoke authorization of synthetic food colorings, including those not in production, namely citrus red number 2 and orange B, within the coming weeks. Number 3, taking steps to eliminate the remaining 6 synthetic dyes on the market from the U.S. food supply, specifically red dye number 40, yellow dye number 5, yellow dye number 6, blue dye number 1, blue dye number 2, and green dye number 3 by the end of next year. The FDA is also announcing plans today to authorize 4 additional natural color additives using natural ingredients in the coming weeks, while also accelerating the review and approval of other natural ingredient colors.
Now, until just recently, it was looking like the plan was to slowly phase out the chemicals from the American food products, Red 40 being one of the biggest examples, and the plan is to phase it out over the next couple years. This is not going to be a quick thing. They're now saying basically by the end of 2026, but they're doing it, right? RFK Jr. talked about this during an interview on CBS 2 weeks ago. Watch this.
It was just about timing. They said it's going to take us a while. For example, the CEO of Pepsi, which owns Doritos, said that in Doritos, people, the consumers like them to be very red, and we have not yet found a vegetable dye that we can match, but we're going to do it. And I said they all have to be out within 2 years.
Within 2 years. You said it's going to take a while. What's a while?
Well, I think we can go much faster than that. And I met with Tyson's Foods 2 weeks ago, and they only use one dye. They're down to one dye, which is a caramel that is used in some of the meat products, and they said we're already working on a way to get it out very quickly.
So are there other...
Now, look, it does seem the time frame has been shortened a bit. It's not clear whether this is going to be 2 years. I mean, it's now looking like maybe a year and a half or something like that. I mean, we're going to have to wait and see whether companies are given longer, more of a grace period for some products. What I assume is going to happen, based on the information here, we'll probably see some of them get phased out first, and then we'll see others come afterwards. The important thing with a lot of these products, though, is that, look, these food companies often have additional products for other countries that already do not include these ingredients because they sell different products to different countries. The ability of them to just remove them, it's there because they do it already. The issue they're going to have is of course, changing packaging, food products currently on the shelves. They're probably not going to make them throw everything away. The loss of revenue for these companies will probably be too great. It'll also give us all a chance to hoard any junk food that we crave and don't want to see go away. And so if you really love some of that food dyed, chips or whatever else, get it while you can. Now look, this also comes on the heels of additional moves by RFK Jr. to address the epidemic of childhood autism. And this was him during a recent press conference directly addressing what he called the alarming increase in autism. Watch this.
It doesn't take you to read the literature. It just takes a little common sense. If autism, if the epidemic is an artifact, a better diagnostic criteria or better recognition, then why are we not seeing it in older people? Why is this only happening in young people? I asked Walter before we came out here, I said, have you ever seen anybody our age? I'm 71 years old with full-blown autism, head banging, nonverbal, non-toilet trained, stimming, toe walking, these other stereotypical features. Where are these people walking around the mall? You can't find them. They're not in homes. There are no homes for them. There are no institutions for them. Why are we seeing them on the street? Anybody can look around and see that this is a canard. And then you have to ask yourself, why is it so pervasive? Why has it been thrown up against us for so many years? And clearly there are industries. This is coming from an environmental toxin. And somebody made a profit by putting that environmental toxin into our air, our water, our medicines, our food. And it's to their benefit to say, to normalize it, to say, this is all normal, it's always been here. But that's not good for our country, and it's not good for the press to not be more inquisitive, to not be more skeptical. And within 3 weeks, and probably we're hoping in 2 weeks, we're going to announce a series of new studies to identify precisely what the environmental toxins are that are causing it. This has not been done before. And we're going to do it in a thorough and comprehensive way, and we're going to get back to with an answer to the American people very, very quickly.
Look, we're going to see what comes out from all of this. The full causes and the findings on this, we don't have all the information just yet. So a lot of this is based on initial reports right now. They did have an initial report released alongside some of these events. But, the full findings, all the research, we don't have it yet. RFK Jr., though, he's saying the autism epidemic is mainly being caused by something, or maybe a few things, in our environment. He says something in our environment is causing this. And in that same press conference on autism, he also brought out a researcher at Rutgers University Medical School. This is Walter Zahradorny, who is the New Jersey Autism Study Director. Watch this.
In my opinion, future reports from epidemiologists will show the data provided in yesterday's report strongly suggests that not only is this a high point of autism prevalence, but in the future, rates can only be higher. Autism deserves to be treated as a real public health phenomenon, and I would say is an urgent public health crisis. It's not just that we're more astute or perceptive. It's not like 2 or 3 children out of for every one with autism has remained invisible. Autism is striking, and the consequences are lifelong. So
look, within about 2 weeks, we should be getting more information about the causes of autism. In the meantime, though, the administration is also going to start collecting more data on this. And that's also raising some criticisms over privacy, because who are you to monitor our medical data, right? That's going to be one of the issues. CBS News reported this. They say the National Institutes of Health is amassing private medical records from a number of federal and commercial databases to give to Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s new efforts to study autism, the NIH's top official said Monday. And that's, of course, raising some concerns, because normally your medical data is, private. They can't really share it with government. But how does government research what they, view as a health epidemic if they can't get the health information? This is the challenge they have with it. Now, notes the new data will allow external researchers picked for Kennedy's autism studies to study, quote, comprehensive patient data with broad coverage of the U.S. population for the first time. NIH Director Dr. Jay Bhattacharya said this, and he said that the idea of the platform is that the existing data resources are often fragmented and difficult to obtain. The NIH itself will often pay multiple times for the same data resource. Even data resources that are within the federal government are difficult to obtain, he said in a presentation to the agency's advisors. It notes as well that medication records from pharmacy chains, lab testing, genomics data from patients treated by the Department of Veterans Affairs and Indian Health Services, claims from private insurers, and data from smartwatches and fitness trackers, which I assume they're buying from these companies, will all be linked together, he said, meaning they're going to be getting a lot of data. And it says as well, the NIH is also now in talks with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to broaden agreements governing access to their data, meaning this is a privacy issue, of course, for some people. That said, folks, we'll be finding out, hopefully, what are the environmental causes of autism. There's 2 sides with this. Some others suggest that they've overdiagnosed autism. If a kid is a bit of a space cadet and enjoys staring at the clouds and can't sit still in class all day, they probably will diagnose that kid with autism. In the past, you probably say the kid is bored. And so there are some questions over whether all of these kids actually suffer an issue or whether they're overdiagnosing it. Without a doubt, though, you do have some people who suffer from severe autism, and the more severe lines of it, used to be the ones we would more diagnose. We'll find out. We'll see what comes out from this, but without a doubt, there is research on a lot of products, chemicals, things in our food supply that do affect attention, that do affect your ability to be calm, that do affect a lot of things. And if it is proven that maybe things we're eating or things in our water are impacting our temperaments, impacting our focus, very likely they can do something about it. And if you understand that you can take health supplements, you can take different herbs and treatments and so on to improve your focus, there are also chemicals out there proven to do the opposite. And if those things are found to be in abundance in our drinking water or food or medicine or whatever else, they could address that. And so we probably will see a campaign, as Kennedy has been talking about, to remove some of these products from, again, food, water, and so on. But we will see. This is all underway. In a couple weeks, we'll find out. As said, folks, let's jump into some questions. So leave a comment, give us a like. It helps us a lot. Let's jump into some questions. And during the first part, I always kind of glance over at the questions. I see some of you talking. One of you said that milk is pus. I've heard that too, that the way they over milk, it's not all of it, the way they over milk cows with like cheap milk, they do it in ways that's sometimes harmful to the cow, and it does cause damage, and you're getting like blood and pus. But it's not all cows. You can buy high quality milk, and it's not going to do that. I can tell you, like, late night, going down the rabbit hole of internet research, I've looked into milk, and has anybody ever looked at milk drinking cultures and compared them? You notice anything? What is the difference between global milk drinking cultures and cultures that do not drink milk? Well, normally about like 1 or 2 feet of height is one of the big differences. If you compare like Mongolians to maybe Chinese, you might notice Mongolians are huge. They tend to be very large. They're taller, they're bulkier, they're big people. They drink milk. You might notice the same thing with European countries that have milk cultures. Look at the Dutch, by the way. The Dutch, I believe, are the tallest people in the world. They're a milk culture. Americans are a milk culture. I grew up drinking milk. I'm not as tall as I would like to believe I am, as my wife points out, but I grew up drinking milk, and that's what matters. I do believe actually it does have some benefits, but it makes you big and strong, right? That's what I grew up being told. I don't know if that really applies to everybody or if it's all in our heads, but you do notice that milk cultures tend to be bigger, right? Another question, Martin McKenzie, you're saying, will everyone get withdrawal symptoms when the poisons are removed? That's actually a good question. I don't know. You'd say, I'd love to be an archaeologist 1,000 years from now and explain the madness of these times. That might actually be true. That might actually be true. James Dyson is saying Josh is 4'10". No, I'm not. I'm like 6'5" in my imagination. I have the killer whale thing going on. They have like the big splotches on the side to make their eyes look bigger. I have 3 or 4 inches of hair, and so that's my illusion, right? So back to the question, Martin McKenzie. You said are we going to have withdrawal from these poisons? I don't know. I mean, that actually is a big question. Have we become so used to consuming poisonous products that we've become addicted to them? I can tell you to an extent. Has anybody ever tried cutting white sugar out of their diet? Real question. I've done it before. For the most part, I try not to eat too much white sugar. I don't go to an extreme with it. I have some. If you've ever tried cutting out white sugar, you will realize you are incredibly addicted to it. You will go through withdrawal. I've done that before, and it was crazy actually. So try it, really, if you want to see if you're addicted to it. Is that a case when it comes to other food products? I don't know. I do think it's plausible, but I would assume that to be addicted to it, you'd have to consume it all the time. I mean, some people are definitely addicted to soda or things like that. Maybe there's a certain ingredient in that makes you more addicted. Some people would just say it's caffeine, but I don't know. Maybe there's something else. Some products are manufactured to be addictive. Potato chips and so on, some of the junk food out there. It is manufactured in such a way to create kind of an addiction. And so you eat it and you don't really feel satisfied, so you want to keep eating it. I think we probably will find a lot of stuff like this. California gal, you're saying, if they make the products different from other countries, why can't they just do it for us too? I feel like I'm being cheated here, actually. I was in France recently. I was in the UK and Italy last year on vacation. And you don't really find a lot of junk food. You don't find it like you find here, at least. I mean, they have junk food, but it's different. A lot of the soda drinks, you just feel like the quality is better. Even some of the candies and stuff, they're better. My wife, she's from Paris, and so I brought back a bunch of candy for her and my daughter when I was in France recently. And it's good. It's different from the candy you get here. It doesn't feel like it's as bad for you. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because you can eat it with less guilt. I'd assume it's still very bad for you. You probably shouldn't eat a whole bunch of it, but it's not as bad as the stuff we have here, I think, without a doubt. I also noticed that you feel more satisfied with a lot of that stuff. Like, for example, has anybody eaten like real high quality chocolate? If you eat high quality chocolate, you'll notice you can eat one piece of chocolate and feel satisfied. You don't feel like you need to eat a whole box of chocolates. You'll eat one piece, you don't feel like you want any more. Whereas with like some of the stuff they have here, you eat one piece and you want to eat like the rest of the box. Yeah. And I do believe that's because of the way they formulate it. One issue you're going to have is that some people are without a doubt addicted to just junk food. You do have some people who want junk food. And you can say it on a few things. Maybe it's a comfort thing, maybe it's a nostalgia thing. I can tell you I really enjoy hot Cheetos. I grew up eating hot Cheetos. I love them. They're a comfort food for me because as a kid I used to eat them. I'm going to miss them. I'm really going to miss hot Cheetos when they ban all of it. And I've been secretly plotting to hoard some so that when they do ban it, I can have a secret supply I can go, dip into if I really have to. I can have the old black market hot Cheetos. But I would assume most people have some junk food they ate as a kid that they'll probably miss if they get rid of them. But I would also assume they'll have alternative products that are probably not that much different. And, and this is also something you're going to see with, as California gal noted, if they make the products different for other countries, why can't they just do it for us too? One of the reasons is, if you go to other countries, you'll find that a lot of these big companies, they do different products for different countries. For example, if you go to Asia, you're going to find shrimp-flavored chips, shrimp flavor. If you just bring that here, a lot of Americans might not want to eat shrimp-flavored chips. The palate is different. They're actually very good, by the way, if you've never tried them. Shrimp-flavored chips are very good. In Japan, you might have wasabi flavor. You might have Korean barbecue flavor. They have different flavors for different cultures. When I was in Taiwan, Kentucky Fried Chicken, do you know what they're known for in Taiwan? In Taiwan, Kentucky Fried Chicken is not known for fried chicken. They're known for egg tarts. They do very good egg tarts. Because in Taiwan, you can get pretty good chicken. Korean chicken is very good. But the egg tarts that KFC does in Taiwan are fantastic. You have different countries, different palates, and they'll have different products. I saw Pizza Hut in Taiwan, and the pizza they serve there would offend many Italians. Italians would not be able to take it. Don't bring cover their eyes if you go there. They wouldn't be able to take it. The things they have that they call pizza in Taiwan, they're not pizza. It's something else. It looks good, but it's a product developed by that company for the local market. And so what I would assume would happen is that if they get 2 years to remake their products for the American palate, they're probably going to make a hot Cheeto brand for somebody like me who loves hot Cheetos that does not contain the banned chemicals. You know what I mean? So I don't have to hoard them. I don't have to go and run a black market ring for hot Cheetos because that is the product I like. That is the product I would buy. And I probably won't as actively buy the other things if they just bring a bunch of like European products here or something. Just in reality, right? Because the thinking is you can already buy a lot of those products. The reason they're not common here is because people don't buy them. You have to sell people what they want. You know what I mean? And so my assumption is that's what's going to be happening. Anthony Carbone, Anthony Carbone 3826, you're saying, I am surprised you never mentioned that military taking over the border frees up ICE agents stationed at the border to go and find and deport illegal immigrants throughout the USA. I didn't think about that. That's a good point. You're saying, plus it destroys the narrative that the new illegal aliens did nothing wrong and have no criminal acts. Yeah, these are great points from Anthony. You're saying being on a military installation illegally is a criminal act in all by itself. I did talk about that. But you're saying, I am not sure about the next, but I think it allows funding for the military to be used for building the rest of the wall on the border. That's a very interesting concept. You're introducing stuff I didn't think about, but I think you're right, actually. That actually, now I think about it, that was one of the proposals. Trump did want to use the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to complete building the wall. And if they use the Army Corps of Engineers to finish building the wall, if they control that land, they could do it, especially because I mentioned some of the U.S. codes. If you haven't seen it, watch yesterday's episode. I mentioned that in that order, Trump invoked a lot of the U.S. codes. That includes the ability to take control of structures and stuff. And that would make sense too. For those of you who didn't tune in yesterday, effectively, Trump has he's now militarized the border. And what they've done is they've allowed the military to take BLM land, not Black Lives Matter, BLM as in Bureau of Land Management. And anybody who's been to the border regions knows all that border territory is typically on BLM land. So they're not taking, farms from farmers. They're not seizing people's stores, maybe a little bit, but not in this. They're not doing it. There's actually a buffer of land that is government run that is typically on the other side of the border. And so, we typically don't build the border wall right up against Mexico. It's different in some areas. For example, I'm from San Diego. If you go to the U.S.-Mexico border in San Diego, you'll see a lot of people in Tijuana, like on the Mexico side. They build right up against the border wall to the point where they throw their garbage. They just dump it on the U.S. side. They throw their garbage over the fence. But part of the idea of the border wall is you'll typically have two different layers of it. There's the initial wall, there's the older wall, in between is all government land. If they let the military take control of all of that land, they do have the ability to build new structures. And they could use the Army Corps of Engineers, for example, for it. They could do this construction through military contracts. It's actually very smart. Great points from Anthony Carboni here. And also it's a good point too that, and to that point, by the way, if you look at the map of the land, it's about 110,000 acres, 110,000 acres roughly. It basically includes all the southern border of New Mexico, Arizona, and California. The parts not being taken by the military right now are all the borderlands of Texas. But understand that Texas is already basically doing this already. So if you have Texas working together with the federal government, which they basically are, this mitigates the problem you had in a lot of these other states where the governments were not working with the government on this. This allows them to basically bypass that. And it also overrules some of the sanctuary laws because, again, it's military law these individuals will be violating by trespassing on military territory. But as Anthony Carboni notes as well, interesting point, this will also free up Border Patrol and ICE. If the military is handling those operations, those individuals will be able to do more operations within the interior of the United States. And that's a big deal. The other thing you're probably going to see is a lot of people going to like Canada and trying to cross from there. It's a little more difficult, wooded areas, a little more dangerous actually. But they have increased border security on the U.S.-Canadian border as well. So you will probably see efforts there as well. Paul Navante, you're saying, if the desire to have a family can be linked to a 5K stimulus, there's something fundamentally wrong with our society. Well, yes and no. And here's the reason. Okay, so I have a daughter. She's 15 years old. We did a home birth. If you do a home birth, we had the the bathtub and everything, right? We did a water birth. It's expensive. I think the cost just of that was about $5,000. And if you have a hospital birth, it costs money. It costs money to have a kid. And the reality is, a lot of people, a lot of women especially, choose to not have children, not because they don't want children, but because of financial reasons. They're worried that they can't afford another kid. They're worried they can't afford a child. They're worried that if they have a kid, they're not going to be able to work, and they don't know how they're going to support themselves. And so it is an unfortunate reality that economic reasons are what oftentimes dissuade people from starting families. A lot of people choose to not have kids because of their situations, not because they don't actually want to have a kid. And for example, if you go to a family planning, and look, folks, if you want to have a kid and you don't feel you can afford it, if you know somebody who's maybe pregnant and wants to have a kid, but they're considering an abortion, you can go to a pro-life clinic, these family planning clinics, go to the pro-life ones, and they'll oftentimes find ways to support you. There are groups out there that will financially support you. They will help you. And so, there are groups like that. The issue you have, of course, with the government giving stimulus and stuff is, it's tax money, right? The government doesn't generate, well, maybe they are now because of tariffs, but typically the government does not generate money, right? Most of the money they have comes from our taxes. If we start getting money by tariffing other countries, you could argue the federal government does actually generate money, and maybe they'll give us a kickback from that. Great. I would love to have my next kid paid for by tariffs on Chinese goods. Great, right? Tariff them all you want, buddy. But I do, but this is also why some countries give financial benefits to families. For example, I believe, was it Poland or Belarus? They had a lot of pro-life movements there, trying to encourage people to have families. They started giving financial benefits to families to have kids. In countries where they have really low birth rates, like Japan, South Korea is actually the lowest in the world, I think. A lot of it is because of economic reasons. People cannot afford rent. They can barely get by. And most people just cannot afford to have kids. Has anybody ever seen the movie Idiocracy? It's a very funny movie if you haven't seen it. But the basis of that film is that all the educated people are like thinking about, should we have a kid or not? And logically, if you're thinking about it logically, you might say no, because it makes, it costs too much money and you're not sure if you can do it. And the basis of that film is all the people who have kids are like the uneducated people, and it causes like a decline in human intelligence because of that generationally. But the basis of that is, the people who don't think about it, they have all the kids. You know what I mean? And maybe that is the case. Maybe that is the case. I've often told people that having a kid is like going to Narnia. You can only go there if you don't mean to go there. You know what I mean? You got to throw fate to the wind sometimes. And I've had people tell me as well that, there is never a right time to have a kid. You just got to do it. And, the situation the path will reveal itself. You just got to do it. And if you think too much about it, you'll never have a kid. But that is one of the realities of the problem of, population. A lot of people are not having kids because of financial reasons. It's not because they don't want kids. They can't afford it, right? And so we'll see if even 5,000 is enough for that, because that'll basically cover your hospital fees. That'll basically cover the cost of giving birth, like let alone, having to go on leave or whatever else, right? And so in some businesses they're not going to support you doing that, depending on the business. See more butts. You're saying, Josh, we aren't tracking here. What we are talking about is like quarter strawberry oats here in the US versus Quaker strawberry oats in Canada. Totally different ingredients, same products. That's a good point, actually. All right, that's a good point. I forgot about Canada. Canada consumes many of the same products of Americans. Canada may even, Canada, by the way, folks, do you know what continent Canada is part of? Canada is part of North America. They are legally, technically Americans. They're merely in denial of this fact. They are part of the American continent, right? And so they're in denial of their Americanism. They consume the same products as ours. Maybe we will remedy soon their identity crisis. We'll have to see. But it is a point. I'm joking. I know we have people in Canada watching this. I'm joking with you. But that's actually a good point, actually. There are some products where already there is an identical product already being made that just doesn't have the harmful things. Yeah, my producer's noting like Coca-Cola. If you go to Latin America, look, folks, like Latin American countries do this. They ban, like a lot of countries ban high fructose corn syrup. You can only have cane sugar. Coca-Cola will have like cane sugar Coke in countries, meaning they already have the product. They just don't sell it to us. High fructose corn syrup being a result, by the way, of government subsidies of the corn industry, and it's basically just a product of the subsidized corn industry. It would not be a financially sustainable product without the government subsidies of corn. Chocolate ingredients, Fruit Loops, for example. That was something Kennedy brought up. Fruit Loops, right? That Fruit Loops, they already have almost identical products for other markets that just remove some of these things. And so it is a good point. Seymour Butts is noting that actually a lot of these companies already have identical products, the same products, but just without the harmful chemicals for local markets, including the in denial Americans north of us, by the way. So another question here. Sorry. I like to tease the Canadians, and I know some of you are from Canada here. Denise B., you're saying Canada's Quaker strawberry oats use real strawberries. U.S. Quaker oat strawberries use fake strawberries. Do they really? I feel like I've been lied to my whole life. I've been living a lie, folks. I've been eating the Quaker oats and believing they were real strawberries all along. Go figure. The Canadians were getting the real strawberries this whole time. What are you going to do? All right, folks. Anyways, great seeing you all today. I will see you all tomorrow. What day is it again? It is Wednesday. Happy Hump Day. Join me again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Another great episode lined up, folks. Looking forward to talking to you all again. That said, in the meantime, please do not forget to like this video. It really does help us. We're trying to build back on YouTube, so it helps us on the algorithm. Even if you're on Epoch Times, do us a solid. Jump on YouTube, watch the video there, and hit the like button. It helps us a lot. Right? We'll win one way or another. That said, join me tomorrow, folks. Looking forward to it. And as always, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.